We got a busy weekend to go over. We have 3 spring training games to talk about, a lot of individual performances to keep tabs on, a lot of positional battles to keep tabs on as we get closer and closer to opening day. We have Jackson Jobe. We're going to touch on that a little bit. A crazy weekend in the World Baseball Classic. And we're going to preview Javy Baez and his season for 2023. All today on Locked On Tigers.
You are Locked On Tigers, your daily Detroit Tigers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is up, everybody? Welcome back to another edition of Locked On Tigers. I am, of course, your host, Scott Bentley. Today is Monday, March 20th, 2023. Thank you for making Locked On Tigers your first listen every single day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcasts, including YouTube, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every single day. This episode is brought to you by the Ultimate Baseball GM. If you've ever dreamed of becoming an MLB GM and managing your baseball franchise, then this is definitely the game for you. To download the game, just visit ultimatebaseballgm.com or look it up in the app stores. Our listeners get a 100% free boost to their franchise when using promo code LOCKEDON in all caps in the game. Okay, we are back. What's up, everybody? I know that the sun is really bad, by the way, right here. I'm aware. Okay, I'm not oblivious to it. I'm not home, as you can see, down south visiting some family this week. So, but look at that Tigers poster. We travel, baby. We ball. So yeah, excuse the sun. I don't know. Deal with it. Okay, so we got a lot to go over. We kind of just don't even have time to really dawdle and kind of be like, oh, how was your weekend? Even though I hope it was great, we kind of just have to hit the ground running here and just get right into it. Okay, we got a lot to go over. Let's start with some individual performances, some observations from spring training this weekend. First thing, this might be first things first, okay? Matt Manning finally had a really good start. Comfortably his best start so far of the calendar season. Comfortably his best start so far of the spring. Not even particularly close. 3 2/3, 4 hits, no runs, 1 walk, and 4 strikeouts. Was it flawless? No. Was there still stuff that you want to see him improve on? Yes. But this was finally a start that you look at and you go, okay, I actually somewhat am okay with him being on the major league roster to start off the season. We haven't even had one of those yet. It's been really, really brutal for him so far in the spring. So to get that under his belt is really good. The fastball velocity was about 93 miles an hour. It topped out at 95. Awesome. The secondary stuff looks pretty solid. Also, that velocity is not only is that solid just because that's kind of what we expect, but it's like 4 or 5 miles an hour better than what we've gotten so far in the spring. I mean, 2 starts ago, last start, whatever, he had no command. It was topping out at like 88. So really good to see that. The secondary stuff, like I said, looked good. There wasn't a ton of swings and misses necessarily on it, but he did get some chases and some weak contact. And I think he had pretty solid command. There's a couple of slip-ups with the secondary stuff, but pretty solid command. The name of his game really, as the major league level at least, has consistently been, look how bright my hand looks. It looks like it's glowing. The name of his game has pretty consistently been fastball command. And that's somewhat like Captain Obviously, like everybody, if they have good fastball command, they could set up a lot of other stuff. But for him, he threw so many fastballs last year that's really going to be a key for him. So more than anything else, that's kind of velocity and command of the heater. That's like the 2 biggest things for Matt Manning so far. In the spring, for whatever it's worth, Joey Wentz also pitched in this game, and he got kind of rocked a little bit. So it's not a direct correlation, or maybe not correlation. It's not a direct competition between the 2 of them, but it is worth noting when you're talking about if not Manning, then who? I think Joey Wentz and Bo Brisky are in that conversation, and neither of them have particularly good weekends. So Matt Manning finally gets a good start under his belt. That is a great thing. Colt Keith, he's fun and he's good. That's pretty much all I have to say. He's not going to make the team. That's already a foregone conclusion. He's, not even on the 40-man, whatever. But I really enjoy watching him play in the spring. I like seeing him get playing time. I'm all for it. Okay, pitching. More pitching, I should say. We've already done pitching. Matt Boyd, Bo Brisky, Tyler Alexander. They all struggled this weekend. All three of them. We have a week left in spring training, people. Okay? We got a week left. And then the boys are heading up north and we're getting a season started. Okay? So some really tough decisions are looming. And while it's somewhat assumed that Tyler Alexander is going to make this team out of camp, because that's kind of just been the assumption we ever since we re-signed him, I guess, at the end of last season. I think he's far from a guarantee, for whatever that's worth. I'm not saying he's not going to make it. I'm just saying I don't think he's like a lock. We kind of talked about that at the end of last week. Brisky also needs to have some good outings out of the pen if he wants to prove that he can develop into that like swingman type of, similar to Tyler Alexander, role from the right side. Matthew Boyd's going to make the team no matter what. His performance, while he did struggle, he really just had one inning from hell, and besides that, kind of was par for the course. So he'll make the team. He'll be in the rotation no matter what, whatever. But Tyler Alexander has a 7 ERA in the spring, and Bo Brisky has an ERA over 9 in the spring. All right, there, at the time of this recording, there is some time left for sure. Again, we got a week left, but if Brisky wants to make this team out of camp, he needs to prove that he can be a reliable option out of the bullpen. He is not going to be in the starting rotation on opening day. It's not going to happen. So he, more than anybody else we've talked about so far, needs to prove that he can solidify a role and look really solid out of the bullpen to force his way onto this opening day roster. And if he doesn't, then they're either going to work on that in AAA or he's going to be a starter in AAA. Regardless, he will certainly get looks at the major league level at some point. We kind of talked about that at the end of last week as well. Opening day, I don't think it's super important for everybody, and I totally understand that. But there's going to be a lot of players that are playing Major League ball for your Detroit Tigers this year. I don't think it's necessarily as big of a deal as maybe it has been in years past, or maybe as just people think it does in general. But definitely positional battles to keep a look on there. Miguel Diaz, I thought, had another really good outing. Scoreless, 2 strikeouts in 1 inning. Still has not allowed an earned run so far in spring training, a 0 ERA. He's got a really good changeup that I like a lot when he tunnels it well and pairs it well, just sequencing in general, I guess, with his fastball. I think it's really effective. It would not shock me if he not only got a legitimate look at the end of spring training, but honestly, just flat out was in the bullpen on opening day. It would not shock me. Regardless, I do expect him to get a look at the major league level at some point this season. Let's get to the offense now. Well, I think I still have some pitching stuff later. But let's talk Spencer Torkelson. Okay, this was like one of the bigger storylines. Jackson Jobe's probably the biggest, but one of the bigger storylines of the weekend was Spencer Torkelson absolutely crushing the baseball. He's been on a tear. We talked about a lot this spring how he has been getting super unlucky, hitting the ball really hard, just right at people, and that luck is finally turning around. He has a batting average of 300 overall in spring training, and he's been crushing the ball to all parts of the ball field as well. Really, really cool. Hit an opposite field home run over the weekend. Looked really solid. Last year, we talked about his aggressiveness or lack thereof aggressiveness at the plate, right? Like his walk numbers weren't bad last year, but we talked about it a ton on this show, how he was almost too passive. Not even almost. He was. He was too passive at the plate. And this spring, he's been a lot more aggressive, a lot more confident, not swinging at junk still, though. Like he's just been getting around on the ball a lot quicker, timing fastballs a lot better, and it's really starting to pay off. So really, really cool. Very nice to see him actually get rewarded for hitting the ball very hard. I believe it was Woodward Tigers. That was the tweet I saw of it. So this is where I'm getting the stat, but if somebody else got it first, I don't know. But Woodward Tigers tweeted out that he started off the spring 1 for 14 and then has been 11 of 25 with 2 walks and 3 Ks since. That is beautiful. And I am glad that it appears that he might be swinging a hot stick going into the season, which is a beautiful thing. So very excited for the adjustments that Torkelson's made. He's looked really good in the spring, and his numbers probably should be even better. And they're already pretty solid at this point. So very, very nice to see that. Okay, let's get into some other observations. We got a few more. We got Jackson Jobe. We got the WBC. We got Javy Baez, et cetera, et cetera. But first, I got to tell y'all about our friends over at the Ultimate Baseball GM. I'm really excited about this. We've been talking about it for a couple of weeks now. Our new partner and the sponsor of today's episode is the mobile game Ultimate Baseball GM. If you've ever dreamed of becoming an MLB GM and managing a professional baseball franchise or your professional baseball franchise, your dream can come true. And this game is definitely for you. You can manage every aspect of your team. You can play through the season, lead your team to glory. You're responsible for hiring coaches and staff, managing team finances, scouting and drafting players, managing difficult personalities, navigating your franchise through free agency, the ups and downs of the season, the trade deadline, etc. All of this is in a challenging and realistic game world. Ultimate Baseball GM is completely free and playable offline. So you can play on the go whenever you want, wherever you want, once it's downloaded on your phone. Okay. It's absolutely awesome. The hosts of the MLB channel over here at Locked On are kind of doing like a tourney thing, and it's super cool. It really is a great game. It's kind of like my childhood wrapped up in a game. It's very, very cool. So Locked On Tigers listeners are also getting 100% free boosts to their franchise when using promo code Locked On in all caps at the game store. So make sure to check it out. To download the game, you can visit probaseballgm.com. You can scan the code on the screen if you're watching at YouTube, or you can just look it up in the App Store. That's probaseballgm.com, the Ultimate Baseball GM. Start your dynasty today. All right, everybody. Welcome back here. Segment 2 of Locked On Tigers. Appreciate you all for tuning in as always. I do hope you had a good weekend, even though we didn't really have time to talk about your weekend or my weekend. I hope that it was good. This sun is really... What if I just did this? If I just like did the whole show, kind of just like covering the sun? That's a good look. Okay, let's get right back into it because we got a lot to talk about still. We're trying to get through a lot of info. Long weekend. Boom. Okay. Akil Baddoo, really solid weekend. Few hits, home run. His numbers for the spring look pretty solid at this point, and they weren't at one point. They were not looking good. We talked about it early last week. So seeing him kind of turn around and see the ball a little bit better is a great sign. Kerry Carpenter, however, also a couple of hits this weekend and a couple for extra base hits. I think that if the decision is close, I still think they're going to choose Akil Baddoo just for the intangible things that he brings that Kerry Carpenter doesn't. But I'm glad that it's at least now a conversation. And it's not a conversation because neither of them are hitting like it was really early on in the spring. It's now, right? Like before, I felt like we were like, oh, well, neither of them are hitting well. So I guess we kind of have to go Baddoo because he's more athletic and can steal bases and Carpenter can't. Now we're having the conversation of, okay, now both of them are starting to hit a little bit. Which way do you lean? I still think it's Baddoo, but it's nice to see it's at least more of a competitive conversation than it was 2-3 weeks ago. Okay. And regardless of who wins the battle, again, I'm going to keep reiterating, both will get major league at-bats this season, assuming health. Okay? Can guarantee it. Andy Ibanez was back and getting some ABs in a spring game this weekend. He's expected to still return because he plays for Team Cuba in the WBC, and he's expected to still go back and play for them. If he's healthy, he's going to play. If he's not healthy, then he'll just rejoin the team, I'd imagine. But Cuba's still in it at the time of this recording. I believe they play Sunday night against the U.S. So I guess by the time you're listening to this, you will know Cuba's WBC team's fate, and you will know where that falls. But Andy Ibanez, yeah, will be with the team for as long as they are in it, assuming that his hand and thumb are feeling all right. But nice to see him in a spring training lineup for the Detroit Tigers. That was kind of nice. And honestly, very important because he is very much in the mix for that utility infield spot. I think a lot of people would even like to see him on the roster, so especially because he can play first base. So very, very important for Andy Ibanez to get healthy and kind of get some playing time before the season starts still. What else? I think the only other thing as far as spring training news and notes go is Erod. He continues to have an incredible spring. The Venezuela lost to the U.S., which we'll talk about later, on Saturday, and Erod immediately turned around and threw 75 pitches, 4 2/3, no runs, 1 walk, 5 strikeout ball. His ERA in spring training is 0.00 for the Detroit Tigers. He looks amazing. Command looks really good. The stuff looks good. I think we're finally going to see the Eduardo Rodriguez that we hoped we saw last year and never got the opportunity to. And I'm very, very excited to share that with y'all, because if you followed him in Boston, he has the ability to be a really darn good pitcher. Okay. So that's a good sign. Let's talk about Jackson Jobe. Lumbar spine inflation, I believe, was the diagnosis. If I didn't say any of those words correctly, it's because I'm not particularly smart enough to be a doctor, so that's on me. But 3 to 6 months is what he's going to be out for. I don't have like a whole rant about this. I know that a lot of people get really worked up about Jackson Jobe, like really worked up. I am not one of those people. I will say, okay, very quickly, we will touch on this and then we will move on to the WBC and then on to Javy Baez. Like, that's why it was scrutinized. Like, this is why. This is it, right? High school arms have always and will always be the riskiest picks in baseball. That's objectively true. And it's because of injuries. It's because they're so early on in their development. It's because high school bats are nowhere close to professional bats. There are so many reasons to why high school arms will always be the riskiest picks in baseball, every single draft. And this is why it was scrutinized. This is why. This is what's happening. And I'm not saying that Jackson Jobe can't still be solid, right? Especially if it's only on the closer to the 3-month side of things, right? You're talking about him pitching in the second half of the season. But this is why. That's really all I have to say. This is why. You want to talk about why the pick was scrutinized and why people were confused and frustrated and whatnot? Well, here you go. That's really all I have to say. I still like Jackson Jobe. I still think he can become a darn good pitcher. I think in the second half of last year, he took huge strides developmentally. I really like his trajectory. I think he's going to be a pitcher for the Detroit Tigers, and he's going to be a solid one at that. But this is why. Okay? That's really all I have to say. I'm not a huge... Like, I don't get on my soapbox about the Jackson Jobe thing like a lot of other people do, because, again, I do see the ceiling. But when you see the ceiling, you also have to acknowledge the floor. And when you're talking about risks of taking high school arms, this is the biggest one, and now it's happening. And I don't think anyone should be surprised. Okay? Cool. Let's talk World Baseball Classic. Trey Turner. Electric Factory, right? Oh, wow. The sun actually, maybe if I just like scoot over here, if I just like lean to the side a little bit, give you like a GQ type of episode from here on out. Incredible moment, right? What a ball game for starters, just start to end. What a ball game. What a spectacle the World Baseball Classic is. I absolutely love it. I know that it, especially in Mets land, it was very controversial over the weekend to talk about why it's stupid and, oh, players are getting injured and it's dumb and it's meaningless, blah, blah, blah. If you've watched a second of the WBC, you very much understand that this is not meaningless, okay? It's meaningless to Major League Baseball because it's not Major League Baseball. The last thing that there's no way you watch the Venezuela versus USA game from the first through the ninth inning and you say that game was meaningless to anyone. The players, the fans, the journalists, the people watching on TV, the people in the stadium. No one. Okay. It was always ridiculous to insinuate, yes, people are going to get hurt in playing sports. They're going to get hurt. I understand it's very easy for me to say this, as none of my players have gotten hurt significantly. Andy Ibanez did have a thumb thing that happened when he was with Team Cuba, but I'm not the closer that I just paid $100 million didn't get hurt. I understand that the frustration that comes with that, and Jose Altuve now got hurt and whatnot. I totally understand the frustration that comes with that, and I understand why that would make you very upset, but that doesn't mean that they're meaningless. There's both can be true. You can be frustrated that, players get hurt in spring training all the time. That doesn't mean it's not still something that's going to happen every year and is very important. and meaningful. Okay? Cool. What a game, though. What a game. Trey Turner. I know I got some Canadian fans of the Detroit Tigers that listen to this as well, but man, that Trey Turner grand slam, that's everything. That's baseball right there, baby. What a beauty. I've watched that clip about 6 billion times in the last 24 hours, and I don't think I'm stopping anytime soon. Love the World Baseball Classic. We will see what happens. By the time you're listening to this, you'll already know the result of the USA-Cuba game on Sunday night. And then I think Japan-Mexico is Monday. And then, yeah, all leads to the finals, baby. Very, very fun. Okay, let's talk Javy Baez. He's the player preview today. We'll get to that right after I tell y'all about our friends over at FanDuel. Tournament is heating up. My bracket is big time busted. You're speaking to someone who had Kansas winning it all. Wah, wah, wah. That's my fault. It really was a rough year all around. I had so many of the upsets didn't go my way. So many upsets I predicted didn't go my way. And now my champion's gone before the Sweet 16. It was a rough year for yours truly. But that doesn't mean that me and you can't still win a little bit even when your bracket's busted. And that's via FanDuel, America's #1 sports book, because new customers get a no sweat first bet up to $1,000. That's bonus bets back if your first bet doesn't win. Just download the FanDuel Sportsbook app. It's safe, it's secure, it's super easy to use. Then you can bet on everything from the money line, point scores, 3-pointers drained, etc. Plus, FanDuel lets you combine your bets for a chance at a bigger payout with the same game parlay. It's awesome. So don't miss the chance to get your no sweat first bet up to $1,000 in bonus bets when you go to FanDuel.com/lockedon. That's FanDuel.com/lockedon to learn more. Make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sports betting partner of the NBA. All right, everybody, welcome back. Oh, the sun came back. Oh, nope. I think it's unavoidable this time. Okay, welcome back. Third and final segment here, Locked On Tigers. Let's talk Javy Baez. We all know what Javy is. I'm not going to tell you something that, well, I might tell you some stuff you don't already know, but we know the type of player that he is, okay? We are all very aware of who Javy Baez is as a baseball player. And, you know, when thinking back to when we signed him, really even back to the Cubs days, I don't think that Javy Baez, how do I word this? I've never believed that Javy is the best player on a Detroit Tigers World Series team. But I do still firmly believe that he can be a heck of a supporting cast member. And by supporting cast, I don't mean like the 8th best player on the team. Obviously, that would be a darn good ball club. But I think if he's just not one of your 2 or 3, man, the sun's really brutal there, 2 or 3 best hitters, that you're talking about a pretty darn good lineup when he's at his best. Okay. And last year he was not. I am going to try to play both sides of the coin here because I know a lot of people are very, very frustrated with Javy Baez. I know a lot of people cannot stand Javy Baez because of how brutal last year was. Okay. And how frustrating of a player he is in the batter's box. He swings at everything. Okay. Especially every slider. I understand. Okay. Just hear me out start to finish. I think I'll make my stance relatively clear and we can go from there and see what he's going to do in 2023. Okay. He's streaky. He's always going to be streaky. That's not news to anyone. And it's because of aggressiveness. We talked about it with Jonathan Scope over the years. Now we're talking about it again with Javy Baez. He had a 300 batting average and an 832 OPS, however, with runners in scoring position. The thing with Javy has always been, say what you will about him, his entire career consistently, he has been one of the more clutch players in the entire game of baseball. Now, on the flip side, he had a 592 OPS last season with the bases empty. That's absolutely brutal. Now, on the flip side, with 2 outs and runners in scoring position, had a 901 OPS. He lives for the big moments. We saw it in the WBC for Team Puerto Rico and whatnot. We did see it last year for the Detroit Tigers. He had big moments late in games, right? He lives for those. It's just about getting the non-high pressure situations to be better as well. And he's also like, he's not going to change. The style is not going to change. The numbers we hope change, but the style and who he is as a ball player is not changing at 30. So if you're holding out hope and you're like, oh, maybe Javy just won't swing at sliders in the opponent's batter's box, it's not going to happen. He's going to, and we're going to have to deal with that for the foreseeable future. But I do still believe that there is a winning ball club in Detroit with Javy Baez on it, okay? Let's talk about some more splits. Left-handers last year, 834 OPS against left-handed pitching. That's really solid. The problem is 618 OPS against right-handed pitching. That's obviously brutal. Now, when you're looking at last season's splits versus career splits, the lefty's always been better than the righty, and the lefty has always been around the mid-800s. The right-handed, again, always been worse, but his career OPS against right-handed pitching is 731. I'm not asking for him to turn around and just become a totally reinvented hitter and have an 800 OPS against right-handers. I'm not. I would just like to hit your career numbers, dog. How about that? How about you just have a 731 OPS against righties and an 850 or whatever OPS against lefties? I think we would all be very grateful and take that in a heartbeat. I mean, last year was over 100 OPS points lower than his career mark against right-handed pitching. So I'm not asking for career numbers here. I'm not asking for him to change who he is. Just give me the career numbers against right-handed pitching. That's one of the big things, okay? Now, the style of hitter that he is, we are all very clear on. Last year, he was in the first percentile in chase rate, the fourth percentile in whiff rate, and the seventh percentile in walk rate. He's not going to draw walks. He goes up there with the intent to hit the baseball. He's going to chase a lot of pitches. Most of them are going to be sliders low and away, and he's going to swing and miss at almost all of them. Okay? Glad that we got that out of the way. I will say this, because that's, again, not changing, and it's going to be frustrating, and I'm going to be mad, and it's annoying. And it's frustrating really is the word. I will say this, though. No, it's obviously not great, and it's not what this team's identity is trying to be with Scott Harris in charge either. But you can live with it under two circumstances, okay? One, as I said earlier, you can live with it if he's not the best hitter on your team. If he's a supporting cast member, if he's the second, third, fourth best hitter in your lineup and can provide offense when he's on a hot streak, but when he's on a cold streak, the lineup isn't completely useless and the top of the lineup can't produce anything, right? You can live with it in that regard. So that's one thing. If we can just get more production, because yes, he struggled last year, but everyone did. This was one of the worst offenses literally ever. So we need some Javy having a 900 OPS last year wouldn't have changed too much, okay? Objectively, even if you don't even care about the Javy narrative, we would just like more players to hit the ball well, please, okay? So that's one thing. Two, and this one is probably more importantly, if we can just get the hard hit and power numbers back to what they usually are. Hard hit rate. Last season, below 50th percentile. Barrel rate, around 50th percentile, just over 50th percentile. Expected slug, 38th percentile. Okay? All in the bottom half of the league-ish. Just in 2021, just the year before last, not too long ago, okay, in a land far, far away, he had a hard hit rate in the 74th percentile, an expected slug in the 67th percentile, and a barrel rate in the 85th percentile. In 2019, he was bad in 2020. You guys are very well aware, no matter who it is, I don't really care about 2020 for anyone. I don't think it was real. 2019 was one of the best years of his career for starters, and we're even better in all of those categories while maintaining the whiff rate, the chase rate, and the walk rate close to the first percentile, okay? My point is, if he can just get the power numbers in the hard hit rate back to what it usually is, I promise you, you will live with the swings and misses a little bit better, at least. I'm not saying you're going to sleep well with it and you're just going to be like, oh, yeah, that's just totally fine. I don't care. But you're going to be a lot more lenient on those strikeouts and on those moments if you're like, okay, well, he's on pace to hit 30 bombs this year, though. And he has a 500 slug or a 480 slug. Okay, sure. Every once in a blue moon, if he wants to go fishing, that's fine. I'll live with it today. If both of those happen, then I think this becomes a non-story, honestly, relatively quickly. It's just going to be like, yeah, that's Javy, but like we live with it because of X, Y, and Z. Is that going to happen? Probably not. I can't imagine that both of those things happen overnight. But those are the circumstances in which you live with it. Okay? Defensively, he's going to play short all year. I'm sure he'll get mid-game switches like we've already seen in the spring where like you can flip someone to the other side of the diamond. You know, if three lefties are due up, he might play second for the inning because there's no shift anymore. But he's going to be the shortstop on a nightly basis. Last year was obviously not great defensively either. An insane amount of errors, almost all of them throwing. Some negative metrics defensively too. Not across the board, but like some of them, which are very rare for Javy. Even if he does have the throwing errors, usually he still grades out positively in like OAA and DRS and stuff. And I think he had a negative DRS last year, actually. For whatever that's worth. Some people like OAA better, but he was only barely positive in that regard too. So let's just wrap this up. Okay. He's had some really good offensive seasons despite his approach at the plate. Okay. He has maintained the approach that he had last year, but still put up 6-win seasons. Multiple. Okay. It's possible for him to be very productive with this style. Am I saying he's going to put up 6 wins this year? No. Okay. That's not what I'm trying to sell you. I'm just saying there are the negatives against him shouldn't only be, oh, you know, he's gonna swing at everything and that's why he sucks. No, that's not true. That's not the full story, even close to it. It is possible for him to be a really productive baseball player while still being himself. He's also had some really good defensive seasons, despite some throwing errors sometimes. Okay. This is a dude that like broke StatCast defensively in like 2018 because he just put up ungodly numbers. Of the shortstop class 2 off seasons ago, I said on here, I was ranking the shortstops, the 5 big name shortstops in the order that I wanted them, and Javy Baez was 5th. I can't go back and change that. I still probably maintain that belief. But that doesn't mean that this dude doesn't have 6 WAR potential because he's done it, again, multiple times. I'm not saying there won't be frustration. I'm not saying there's not going to be a lot of throwing errors or that he's not going to swing at sliders in the other batter's box. But if some other players step up and Javy just hits balls as hard as he has his entire career, I still very firmly believe that there is a lineup for the Detroit Tigers that wins ball games and is a competitor with Javy Baez on it in the future. Does that make sense? I hope it did. Because that's my take. All right. Thanks for making Locked On Tigers your first listen every single day. I appreciate y'all greatly. For your next listen, check on the Locked On Fantasy Baseball podcast. Win your league by listening to Matt and Dom every day as they bring you the best fantasy draft strategies. Find Locked On Fantasy Baseball wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day. All righty. I appreciate y'all. I think that's it. I'm going to go watch the WBC because that's about to start in my reality. And I will see y'all tomorrow. Almost there. We're almost to opening day. It's almost game time. There's going to be a lot of roster cuts, major league roster cuts this week. They're going to trim down that roster quite a bit. And then by the end of this next weekend, we will have a decent idea of what the opening day roster is going to look like. And we'll be talking about it every day here. Peace and love. Going to therapy's dope. I'll catch you all tomorrow, baby. Go Tigers.